When you think of Savannah Guthrie, you think of mornings. You think of the warm smile behind the Today Show desk. You think of breaking news delivered with calm authority, of hard interviews conducted with grace, of a woman who has stood in front of millions of people every single day and never flinched. But there are some things even the most composed person cannot prepare for. There are some storms that don't care how strong you are, and what began quietly, almost without notice, has now grown into something that is shaking people to their core, a case, a connection, a mother's name attached to questions that deserve real answers. Few people knew just how deep this story ran. Few people understood what was really happening beneath the surface. But on day 34, everything is about to change. Stay with us, because what we're about to tell you is not what you think it is. And that's exactly what makes it so important. Savannah Guthrie is not just a television anchor. She is, by every definition of the word, an institution. For over a decade, she has been the face that America wakes up to, the voice that delivers news, good and devastating, with a steadiness that feels almost supernatural. She has interviewed presidents. She has covered wars. She has sat across from world leaders and asked the questions that needed to be asked, even when no one else dared. Born on December 27, 1971, in Melbourne, Australia, though raised entirely in the American Southwest, Savannah grew up in a world far removed from studio lights and network television. She was a student, a thinker, a young woman with a mind sharp enough to earn a law degree from the University of Arizona. Before she ever set foot in a newsroom, she didn't stumble into journalism. She chose it, deliberately, passionately, with intention. And the industry recognized that intention almost immediately. She rose through local television stations, moved to Washington, D.C., covered the White House, and eventually landed at NBC News, one of the most powerful broadcasting organizations in the world. In 2012, she became co-anchor of the Today Show, one of the highest-rated morning programs in American history. She married lawyer and political consultant Michael Feldman in 2014. They have two children together, Vale and Charlie, and by every public measure, Savannah Guthrie had built the kind of life that looks, from the outside, completely whole. But life has a way of introducing chaos where there was once order. And for Savannah, that chaos arrived not through her career, not through controversy of her own making, but through something far more personal. Through family, through her mother, and through a story that, even now on day 34, refuses to be neatly resolved. This is not a story about scandal for the sake of scandal. This is a story about a woman, a family, and the questions that arise when the public and the private collide in the most unexpected and emotional ways. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand where Savannah Guthrie came from. She was not born into wealth. She was not handed connections or platforms. Her father, Charles Guthrie, passed away when Savannah was just 16 years old. 16, an age when the world is just beginning to open up, and suddenly, for Savannah, part of that world collapsed. Losing a parent at that age leaves a mark that doesn't fade. It reshapes the way you see time, the way you see family, the way you understand what actually matters when everything else is stripped away. Her mother, Nancy Guthrie, became a pillar, a foundation, the kind of parent who holds the remaining pieces of a family together through sheer force of love and determination. Nancy raised her children with dignity and purpose. She instilled in Savannah a sense of discipline, a commitment to truth, and a belief that hard work would always be rewarded. Savannah carried those lessons into every room she ever walked into. When she was studying law, when she was filing reports from dusty courthouses in Arizona, when she was standing on the White House lawn delivering live reports, Nancy was always there, in spirit if not always in person. The bond between a daughter who lost her father young and the mother who kept the family together is not just emotional, it is structural. It is the scaffolding upon which an entire life is built. And that's why, when Nancy Guthrie's name began appearing in connection with something troubling, it didn't just raise eyebrows. It broke hearts. Savannah Guthrie's career did not explode overnight. It grew, steadily, relentlessly, like something built to last. She paid her dues in local markets. She learned the craft in rooms where no one was watching. She developed instincts that couldn't be taught in any classroom, the ability to read a room, to know when to push and when to pause, to deliver difficult truths without losing the human thread of the story. Her work at NBC's Washington Bureau brought her national attention. Her coverage of the Obama and Trump administrations demonstrated a kind of journalistic fearlessness that is genuinely rare. She wasn't afraid to press. She wasn't afraid of silence. She wasn't afraid of being the only person in the room willing to ask the uncomfortable question. When she took the Today anchor chair, she didn't just fill it, she transformed it. Her interviews became events. Her presence became reassuring. In a media landscape growing more chaotic and fragmented by the day, Savannah Guthrie represented something people were desperately hungry for: clarity, steadiness, and authentic human connection. Awards followed. Recognition followed. Respect followed. And with that respect came something unexpected, a kind of public ownership. The feeling, from millions of viewers, that they knew her, that she was, in some way, theirs. That sense of closeness is beautiful. But it also means that when something touches her world, it touches them too. And what has been unfolding over these 34 days has touched a great many people. No life lived fully and publicly is without its difficult chapters. Savannah has faced criticism over the years, moments where her interviews drew fire, where her coverage choices were questioned, where the relentless scrutiny of being one of television's most visible faces took its toll. There were periods of visible exhaustion, periods where the personal and the professional blurred in ways that were impossible to hide completely. In 2016, she was diagnosed with significant vision loss in one eye, a health scare that she handled with remarkable public courage, but that privately represented a terrifying moment of vulnerability for a woman whose entire career depends on being present, being sharp, being there. She didn't hide from it. She talked about it. She let people see that she was human. And the world respected her more for it. But what makes the current situation, the one unfolding now, on day 34, different from any career controversy or personal health scare is its nature. This isn't about Savannah making a mistake. This isn't about a bad interview or a network dispute. This is about something that reached into her family circle in a way that no amount of professional preparation could have equipped her for. The case connected to her mother, the questions that have been swirling, growing, and intensifying over these past 34 days, represents something that no anchor desk, no rehearsed answer, no perfectly worded statement can fully contain, because some things are simply too personal to manage publicly. And this, by all indications, is one of them. People who know Savannah Guthrie well describe her consistently in the same way: warm, genuine, fiercely loyal, deeply private about the things that matter most. She lights up when she talks about her children. She is openly emotional about her faith. She has spoken on multiple occasions about the role that Christianity plays in her life, grounding her during difficult seasons. She is not someone who performs vulnerability for cameras. When she shows emotion, it is real. And that emotional authenticity is part of why this current chapter is so difficult to watch. Because Savannah Guthrie is a daughter before she is anything else, before the Emmy nominations, before the presidential interviews, before the millions of mourning viewers. There's simply a woman who lost her father at 16 and has spent her entire adult life quietly honoring the family that remained. Her mother, Nancy, is not a public figure. She did not sign up for headlines. She did not choose the spotlight that her daughter inhabits with such grace and purpose. And yet, here we are, day 34, and Nancy Guthrie's name is part of a conversation that is much larger and much more complicated than any of us initially understood. The emotional weight of that reality, for Savannah, for her family, for everyone who has watched this story develop, is something that cannot be overstated. Savannah Guthrie turned 52 years old in December 2023. By every measure, she is at the peak of her career, experienced enough to be trusted with the most complex stories, young enough to still carry the energy that live television demands every single morning. But there is something that happens to all of us as we move through our 50s, a quiet shift in perspective. The things that once seemed urgent begin to feel less so. The things that once felt permanent reveal themselves as fragile. Family becomes everything. Legacy becomes real, not abstract. In interviews in recent years, Savannah has spoken with increasing depth about what she hopes people remember. Not the scoops, not the ratings, not the awards shelf. She wants to be remembered as someone who told the truth with kindness, as someone who was present, really present, for her children, as someone who honored the sacrifices her mother made. That reflection makes what is happening now feel even more poignant, because she is at the age where you begin to protect your parents, where the roles quietly begin to reverse, where you start to understand, fully and completely, that the people who built you are not invincible. And when something threatens the peace of someone you love that much, someone who gave up so much for you, the instinct to step forward and defend, to speak, to act, becomes almost unbearable. So what exactly is the case? What are the questions that have been circling for 34 days? Here is what we know, and what we are still learning. Reports emerging from community and legal circles have surfaced questions connected to a property, an estate matter in which Nancy Guthrie's name has appeared as a relevant party. The details remain partially obscured, not because the story isn't real, but because legal processes are slow and complex, and because, it must be said, the family has chosen to handle the situation with the kind of careful discretion that the circumstances demand. What is known is this: the questions are real, the case is real, and the connection to Nancy Guthrie has created a situation where Savannah, through no fault of her own, finds herself in the uncomfortable position of being adjacent to a story she did not create and cannot simply anchor her way through. Sources close to the situation indicate that Savannah has been deeply involved in supporting her mother through this process, that she has not walked away, has not issued distance-creating statements, has not allowed public image to override private loyalty. She has been a daughter, fully and completely, and that, perhaps more than anything else in this 34-day story, is the detail that deserves the most attention, because, in a world where public figures routinely sacrifice personal loyalty on the altar of reputation management, Savannah Guthrie appears to be doing the harder thing. She is staying. She is present. She is choosing family over optics. And that, in its own quiet way, is the most powerful reveal of all. There's a version of Savannah Guthrie's story that gets told every morning on national television. The polished version, the professional version, the version with the perfect lighting and the teleprompter, and the carefully structured segments. But then there is the real version, the version where a 16-year-old girl loses her father and has to figure out how to keep moving forward. The version where a woman builds an extraordinary career while quietly carrying grief and responsibility that the cameras never fully capture. The version where a daughter, in her 50s, still shows up for her mother the same way her mother once showed up for her. Fame is a strange and often cruel thing. It gives you a platform and then uses that platform against you when you are most vulnerable. It turns private moments into public property. It transforms family, the most sacred thing most of us have, into a topic of conversation for strangers. But what endures beyond the fame, beyond the ratings, beyond the controversies and the case developments and the 34 days of questions? Love endures, loyalty endures. The choice to stand beside the people who made you, even when the cameras are watching, even when it would be easier to look away, that choice endures. Savannah Guthrie has spent her entire career asking the hard questions. Now, life is asking some hard questions of her. And from everything we have seen, she is answering them exactly the way you would hope someone like her would. With courage, with grace, with her family beside her. That is a story worth telling. That is a life worth honoring. And wherever the story goes from day 34 onward, whatever new questions emerge, whatever answers eventually surface, one thing is already clear. Savannah Guthrie is more than a broadcaster. She is a reminder that behind every public face is a private heart, and that the most important stories are always the ones we almost never see.